Right, well, note for the record, we do have a quorum, so we are able to meet this evening and to hear items that are on the agenda before us. We have a set of minutes from the meeting held February 2nd. Are there any questions about these minutes or comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries and the minutes.
Thank you, James, for taking care of all this for us.
All right, we have one item of new business on the agenda this evening. It is a rezone request for 3 tracts of Terrace Meadows subdivision totaling 9.23 acres. The request is to rezone the property from C2 to R4. Anytime we have a rezone request, we have to, by law, have a public hearing to discuss the plans and to let anyone who wishes to be heard on the matter one way or another an opportunity to speak. Mr. Bob Hasler is here this evening, and I assume Adam is going to represent him. Mr. Whitlow, who most of us are familiar with. If you'd like to just address us, tell us generally what your idea is, and then we'll let anyone else speak who would like to.
Sure. If you indulge me, I've got some information to pass out. This is a copy of it. Everyone for everybody. What I'm handing you here is just a copy of the concept plat. It's nothing we're taking action on tonight, but it had to let you see what our plans are, subject to the rezone. Commissioner Pastor is passing out some information. We'll just go to.
Yeah, I'm giving that out.
Mr. Pastor passed out just some information he's compiled on the lots out there. So those very interesting, just information about stuff in case you're interested. Tract lies north of the current development line of Terrace Meadows. This was property was originally zoned commercial. In hopes that would attract maybe a big box or some big type of commercial there. So we got 600 feet depth or so. Unfortunately, that opportunity just came up. So Professor decided to take a portion of that and work it out to residential lots.
Do you want a copy of the map?
He's already developed, but there's still a growing demand for these lots, and felt like this was the best move for the property. Still have 360 feet of depth in the commercial area, so it should be able to accommodate. We think any commercial, prospects can still come down the corridor, get the best of both worlds. These lots, you see by the sketch plat, which fills out the property there, these are deeper lots in the original phases, so they are a little bit nicer, a little bit bigger lots. But beyond that, we'd like to answer any questions y'all may have. We just think this is, I know it's a little bit atypical, non-typical to go from commercial out to residential, but in light of the demand of inventory on the market right now, that seems to be the way we want to go.
Very good. Thank you, Adam. I'm going to have questions for you here in a few minutes.
Sure. Any question I can answer about here, like I said, he's provided a lot of good information. Tax base, the character of the homes, character of the people that he's countered out there. I think that's just a very good, you know, representation of what, you know, of what they have out there through this development.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, guys.
All right, does anyone wish to be heard on this rezone request? If so, if you please state your name and address for the record, that would be helpful. Who would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll call the public hearing to an end. And commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Tasler, Mr. Whitlow on their concept or plan for this rezone? By way of just reference, I spoke with James earlier, and we've advertised everything. So there's every reason to hear this tonight, no reason not to. So should be good.
May I start?
Sure, please.
All right, Bob, thanks for coming out tonight. Adam, I'm gonna probably ask this question to you, but Bob, you fill in. On this track one, you've got 300 feet north-south of the property, 125-foot lot line. So the assumption is it's gonna be a 50-foot right-of-way for that street?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've got some parking issues down there, Bob, down at the bottom end. You're aware of that, when they're parking on the street down there. Down the bottom of Wildflower, Sunflower, I think it's had it before, I don't know if it's still going on. So we've just got to try and avoid double stack. I know we've got a couple of folks here that live in that area out there. You know, if you're trying to navigate taking terrace down to the bottom down there, coming around, swing back over the meadow, you can look up to your right and you see cars parked on that. So will you allow us enough setback on these houses and driveways where we can get two cars parked in those driveways?
Yeah, I would contend it's there now. You know, I wish I had an answer for you on how to deal with that problem.
I have to say something.
That 125-foot building depth will probably give you adequate for a deeper driveway.
Well, but you know, the driveways now, you have your 25-foot or 26-foot setback for your front yard, and then you're 11.5 foot from the curb. So you've got 36.5 feet driveway length. And that's longer than most driveways that you find in town. And the problem is education, I think, from the parking, because the city has an ordinance that you're not supposed to park in the streets, and don't they? Doesn't the city have an ordinance that says you can't park in the street?
I believe that to be true, but I'm not certain.
But see,
I think even if the city doesn't have an ordinance, there's some language in the fire code that actually somewhat prohibits that to a level. But, you know, that's something we've encountered in other subdivisions, and like I said, I've heard them outside. A 27-foot wide back curb street is typically designed for parking along one side of the street. You can meet fire code parking along one side of the street. Problem is, no one parks on, no one agrees to handshake park on the right side.
Well,
So you get a slalom effect when you get, you know, multiple cars and you know.
the slalom effect with cars is not the issue. It's when you try and get our pumper truck to go down there, or, you know, kids playing out in the street and cars doing that weave.
We have found, at least my coworkers neighborhood, that it becomes an issue when you've got icy roads and unequipped drivers. It gets to be kind of one of the pinball.
Complicates everything.
Yeah.
We need enough setback on that building lot line there, or at the front of the building, to give us an adequately deep driveway. That's, because you're on the top of the hill there, that's gonna be the first impression people get when they pull in to the entire Terrace Meadows anyway. So I would recommend spend a little more on that driveway. Set the house back a few more feet. Yeah, it's gonna take away a little bit of the backyard. You squeezed every inch out of these yards you can get.
Well, and I just noticed on this concept, that we have to be, it's annotated at 15, that's not right, you have a 25 foot requirement. And to piggyback on what Mr. Chancellor said, 50 foot right of way, you have to look a half foot and a 25 foot, before they start the garage. Theoretically, you should have adequate space. I don't know where the additional, I can understand you got a kid, you need parks, people have 2-car garages and building up with stuff other than cars and stuff. I don't know, that's a difficult one for the developer, to address. I do, I feel pain, I guess, and I think anything we do, maybe the answer is to go from the standard 16-foot wide driveway to maybe 20, something like that, to accommodate car, 2 cars side by side.
And that would take some of the pressure off, because they are parked like sardines, especially as you get down to the bottom of Meadow down there.
And 20-foot driveway, I think it works.
Okay. Bob, what's your intended use for track 3, the 200 feet by, I can't see the other dimension on it, looks like the 112 feet. What's your intended use for track 3?
Well,
Is that one home, or is that?
yeah, probably. It's back there by itself, we wanted to rezone it so we could use it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a gap area, there wasn't enough space there to get two lots. And it wasn't enough to leave it as commercial, so, we looked at some different options there, maybe it's suitable for duplex or something, I don't know.
Just for clarity, you're talking about just south of the,
No, correct, yeah. And so at the end of the day, we decided just to leave it standard rezone with the rest of them. It may wind up just being a single lot, it's big.
so the request is to zone it R4.
That's right.
Don't correct me if I'm wrong, but that would not accommodate it. You'd have to have a
Or
separate.
accommodate duplex.
Be a single.
Yeah,
be a
that's
single family.
Yeah, right now, we just decided to leave it as single family.
Somebody will like a big yard.
Yeah, but the only thing you can use is, in our code book, would be single family attached, single family detached, so basically a single family home in that. Bob, you're creating a new commercial residential lot line there. That's going to require a new screen between commercial and residential. We require a
Well,
screen.
you got a 40-foot,
We require a screen between abutting commercial property and residential property.
yeah, I know that. But I assumed, we're gonna have a 40-foot space between commercial and residential is in the rule book, if I remember right. And I plan on planting, trees all across there.
That would suffice in the screen.
Well, that's what I think would be the best thing to do, is to put, now, I'm not talking about, some trees 2 or 3 foot tall, I'm talking about some good trees that are gonna grow, you know what I mean? And space them out so when they are grown, they won't have to be cut down, you know what I mean?
Who's gonna, that's gonna be on the,
So when we do
the
the
south side
commercial, is when we'll do that.
right. But what we require, when you put commercial property against residential, you're going the other direction.
Yeah.
I think you've already answered the question. You are going to anticipate putting a screen in there between those two.
Yeah, and the houses will get fences too.
Pardon?
I said the houses will get fences too.
Well, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of fences, but that don't make any difference. You got a 40-foot.
Are you putting the fence in, or are you gonna leave that to the
Well,
homeowner?
that, I don't know, but see, what I'm trying to say is, I know that it's going to be 40 feet between commercial and residential. So, okay, see, somebody buys a lot up front. Well, I'm gonna plant the trees for this, in the space of the 40 foot for that lot, that commercial lot, or the buyer of the lot is gonna do it, see? And that's a given, it's in your rule book that there's gotta be either vegetation or something to break that 40-foot difference between residential and commercial. And the logical time to do it is when the commercial goes in my opinion. I'm not the planning commission, but that's my opinion. That's what I planned all along.
Okay, well, we leave that to our code enforcement officer to examine that anyway, so, but I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It typically is, particularly on commercial, and then you got the consent use, there's usually a use associated with that commercial. This is kind of opposite, commercial, the residential is gonna go in against the undeveloped commercial side, so. I'll see what I'm saying.
It's also gonna have to go in over here on the, let's see, the west side of that, on track 3. Excuse me. Yeah,
Where it
the west
butts up
side.
against,
And there by the Dollar General, there will have to be some form of screening right there as well.
And I guess
That's easy, ain't no problem.
same story on the north side of 22 as well, right? Other questions, Mr. Hasner?
we've got another question in there over there.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see you.
Sorry, I'm wrong.
I hear something about a 40-foot. What is that gonna be? R4, C2, what? What's it gonna be zoned? What's the 40-foot?
40-foot is commercial. That is the part,
So commercial,
Commercial.
but the residential?
there's supposed to be a 40-foot border between residential and commercial. In other words, 40 foot of the commercial property running north and south has to be a border from residential and it's zoned commercial.
So
And
commercial-
you can't put anything in there except some trees. Or you can put another fence. But it would be redundant to put 2 fences. And to me, trees is the best thing you can put.
So what's gonna be fenced, the commercial or the residential?
Well, I don't know. If the people put fences up, that's up to them.
Zoning
I'm not gonna
requires,
fence the commercial. Why would you fence the 40-foot space?
I think it requires a fence in between commercial and residential, does it not? I don't think you
Yes.
can just plant a tree and
No.
wait for it to grow.
No, it doesn't.
It requires, Mary, it requires a screen, but it's within our code book, screening includes fences or vegetative screen. Yes, we're going backwards on this one.
Well, am I wrong that it says you can't just plant it and grow up to be the screening?
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying. Now, I think you'll see most of the houses will have fences as well. I think what Bob's saying is he's not counting on that.
We're not requiring that.
Typically, what we would have done in a situation like this, if that would have all been commercial property and we're putting in residential, you know, you don't necessarily lean on the commercial developer on it. Now, if it's residential property being rezoned to commercial, you like lean on the commercial developer to put up a screen, legally put up a screen. Now, there's no screening between, those homes that are built there on the north side of that first phase there, except for the houses that are there, where you have not put houses in, there's no screening in there. And there's a section of homes there,
Yeah, I know where you're talking about. I never thought.
terrace.
Yeah.
And then there's an open gap of probably 8 homes where there's no fence whatsoever there.
8.
Well, 8 tracks that are not developed yet.
Well.
That
okay,
don't have screening on.
You know, I did put trees up, on that one short, long narrow track where the rock was. I did have, trees up there at one time, and the guy that planted it wrong. But I forgot about the 40-foot barrier you're supposed to have between the commercial and the residential. But over here on the big commercial, I've never forgot about that. And if we weren't going to put this subdivision in, and residential, there would have been a 40-foot barrier behind the existing row of residential houses. And we would have put trees in there. I've always thought that trees were the best to put in. And how we're gonna get two fences in there would be, you know, it looks stupid to me.
But you don't have any problem, what you're saying, is you don't have, we're acknowledging the buffer
Yeah,
and have no issue.
and trees is the thing to put in for the environment, everything else, for look, the whole 9 yards.
And of course, when they bring a plat, that'll be probably discussed more. So, right, you're just asking for the reason.
Right, I think, you know, I think that's good you brought that up.
You know, I'm Mr. Do-Right, I know you guys know that. Whatever shall be done, I'm gonna do it.
Bob, I will acknowledge that you do a good job with your curbs, gutters, your streets,
Thank you.
and everything. Yes, you've taken care of the problems that seem to pop up a few years after construction in some of our other neighborhoods.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I move to approve the application for rezone from C2 to R4 for track 1, track 2, and track 3.
The proper motion to approve the rezone request as submitted from C2 to R4. Second. Proper motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And,
And I apologize for the goofy legal description of tracks 1, 2, and 3. I normally wrote that before, but I was trying to generate a legal description for my house during the ice storm. And limited access to my computer, so. Then what I'm shooting.
But thanks for approving it. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. Okay, I believe that's all we had on our agenda. Are there other items we need to discuss this evening?
Mr. Chairman, we do have an item that I'd like to bring back up. Mr. Collins here with us tonight. This is a old business, I call it, regarding the rezone. We had a public hearing for February on Beach Street. The city requested that we take a look at the drainage. Had a chance to generate that report. And, Mr. Collins here tonight too, the holders and the contract as well. So we'd like to get some input from the commission on this and see if we can resolve it to your satisfaction.
So we just got it tonight, right? I don't remember seeing it before. Has anyone had a chance to review this in detail without questions or anything? Do you want to just kind of tell us what we're looking at?
Yeah, if you like.
I assume folks will want-
technical stuff in there.
I assume for the second for disclosure here, I assume folks will want to study this before they make any major actions on it. But if you want to tell us something about it, that's fine.
Now, I want to give you a chance tonight, just kind of give you a recap what we discussed last time. The discussion focused a lot around the drainage. This tract, remember, we received drainage is coming from the south across this tract under the state highway and to the north to the lower. So there was some discussion on methodologies and how to handle that within what Beebe has, mechanisms to within their planning development or within the rezone with a commitment to the developer or something like that. There was some discussion on providing on-site detention versus in lieu of fee, benefits thereof. The primary thing I want to hit really, the crux of the drainage report, is just kind of let you know what the highlights are, how much drainage there is, and what the impacts are. And if we could, Mr. Call one time engage in a discussion on what, what the developer standpoint might be willing to do. Call your attention to the page page number 4, that starts with downstream considerations. You may also want to look at one of the drainage maps while you're looking at this, so you can kind of get a visual representation of what we're calling region A, region B.
Let's stop on page 4 for a second. You said the capacity of the existing 48-inch culvert. I walked down there for 10 minutes. That's a 36-inch culvert, so your drainage is going to be skewed by about 25%, probably a little bit more than that.
I'll go check that too, because
And I had the RDOT engineer come out and look at it, and she acknowledged that head wall is dangerously eroded with undercoating.
yeah, there's a picture in there of that wall too. I will say, I don't think you changed that. I think the drainage counts do reflect 36 inch. Because we went over that today. The number looked different, but it didn't look like you caught 48 inch. I'll say that for what it's worth. So you've got a region to the west of the site, what we call region A, has about 33, or has about 12 acres. It's coming on our side. We have a region B to the south, it's about 15.6 acres. It's coming up on the west. With those two regions together, they generate a flow, post-development flow of around 85 cubic meters. So you've got a pre-development flow without this development around 74 cubic meters per second. Post-development flow of 85.68. About a 15% increase in the total flow for that culvert. Running accounts, I feel like the state highway culvert, capacity-wise, is inadequate. But I put more considerations on the 3 local roads downstream. You have pictures of in the report. Let's see, Rhode Island Street, Kell Drive, and Terra Drive. Rhode Island Street is the southernmost one, or the upstream version of that. And it's a 36-inch, it mirrors what the state culvert is, except it's in concrete, it's for really metal. On downstream of it, both the downstream culverts, Kell Drive and Terra Drive, those are both double 30 inches ADS lines. Those are relatively shallow as far as road depth. When you're talking pipe, I don't know what the city's experience there. I would anticipate during an extreme storm event that you probably see overtopping on the road.
I would ask the commissioners to drive down there this week before it gets cleaned up. This rain that we had over the weekend, it backs up on the property that's on the south side of Kell there. It will overtop the road there. It really backs up before it crosses over Terra. You see that head walls that they built out of concrete because of the amount of overflow that they get there. As soon as it crosses over Terra, it drops down into a natural stream bed that drains toward Gum Creek there. But I talked to the residents that live there on Terra, and they said that overtops every time it rains with any significance.
Yeah, I would expect that this is not far upstream of the floodplain, the Great Fork floodplain, and there's a map in there that shows So none of this in the regulatory floodplain, but just immediately downstream, what you call it, trail. It's not far down there. So this is a little area, there's no question about it. With that being said, we're limited on what we can do upstream. The impact we have is relatively small considering the size of the basin. I talked to Patrick a little bit about the options. So really our two main options are to provide on-site detention, which, the theory there is you design the site to accommodate where your post-development flows are equal to your pre-development flows. So you provide that in some type of open detention basin, provide that on site. It's a little bit problematic on this site because we're routing so much through this. So what I found is when you try to route a substantial amount of, water through a detention basin, which you're trying to just hold back water for your site and 60 acres, it becomes a little bit problematic because you're still going to have a big weir structure, and that sometimes that weir structure just by perception, it's still got a big opening. My couch, I can show I'll hold back our 8 acres worth of difference in water, but I found that they're not very effective unless you can take it off on. So with that, my conclusion, I kind of lean towards recommending in lieu of a fee option. And the reason doing is because it seems like you've already got existing problems downstream that could benefit from kind of a joint venture, public-private, whatever you want to do, from money in lieu of on-site detention that really just impacts us and pulls water back and doesn't address your current issues.
Refresh my memory, please. This now is zoned R1, and the request would be R3 or PUD or something.
Right, but I think we had it proposed for R3, it's multifamily.
That's the most dense.
We had it proposed for multifamily. Is what we're seeing. And one of the issues is we're finding improvements. We're finding, improvements to the rezone. We don't really have a mechanism to do that without planning use development. But and that's what last time I was here, I couldn't really speak to the developers on what they could or be willing to do. And that's why I got Patrick here. Patrick, you're willing to come on.
Feel free, sir. Come on.
Like I said, I want to get the commission's temperature. I mean, maybe some discussion needs to happen with the council, but, Patrick is, we're more than willing to do whatever, whether that be in lieu of a fee, or a on-site detention.
Whoever do whatever makes most sense to the city.
Yeah. And, if we need to, stay to the record, then we'll find that fee, to the rezone, we would like to do. I think our task now is to get the commission comfort level enough where the proposed use, everybody feels good that the proposed use, in a lot of things to come, is the best and highest use for the land. I feel like we've demonstrated that with the adjacent zoning, what he did before, and this property. So then it becomes the next mechanism. Go down on-site detention versus in lieu of funds. And then it becomes, if Commissioner Paul's my recommendation, like just have a frank discussion on, what's a fair amount for, for that dollar figure. To provide to, recommend to the council. I wouldn't think you expect, Patrick's to single-handedly, upgrade the entire 3 streets. But, also expecting to do his part. you know, based on what I've seen before, you know, $500 an acre, it's reasonable, amount, I think, 3 acres here, so. That's somewhere around the 4 grand range, 5 grand range. Just on that out there for discussion.
What is the cost of correcting pipes? You got a cost analysis on it?
Are you talking about the one there on?
Well, they
367?
couldn't push that highway property.
No, that's highway.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Terra, Kale,
Rhode Island.
and Rhode Island.
You know, as far as the improvements, you know, you added a culvert. I don't know, Mayor, you have any idea of the last culvert replacement project? Just,
No, sir, I can't remember, I'm sorry.
I can give you-
There's been some recent, down at the bottom down there has been recent improvements because they had to rebuild that head wall. I think they're looking at the patches on the asphalt. I think they probably dug up and replaced all of that culvert when they did.
So you're saying these downstream locations are not big enough to handle what's coming through the 367?
It's a combination, they're not, I mean, you know, they match the size capacity wise of the station. But I think your issue is that they sit down so low that that's just a low area anyway.
And they're catching more the further you go.
Right, yeah, they're further downstream. So even when you got double culverts like that, you know, you got very little cover over the road, you're gonna get an overtopping scenario. So you know, what you try to do is just give them the best shot they can.
Make it wider.
Make it wider, keep the ditch cleaned out. You know, so I would figure $60 a foot, $30 for the culvert installation, that's around $1,800. And then let's see, you say a 10-foot wide, times a, I'm not sure how wide those roads are, 25 is probably more than what it is. It's 27 square yards, times 30. So I'm gonna say around 3 grand, you could add a culvert to one of those roads.
There's a house that's on the west side of that culvert on Rhode Island that's fairly close to it. Then you drop down one street on the west side of Kell, there's a house, and I talked to the son of the homeowner, and he stated that it has come right to the foundation on their house there. And Adam, you know, I live on, I own that land that's just north of where he wants to build these.
To the south?
Up north, or excuse me, south, I'm sorry, you're right, south of that.
Right.
So I know how much water's coming off of I-7 down there.
Well, and then, you know, that's consideration too. I mean, what it set some kind of reasonable precedent that,
Yeah,
you know, could apply to that property as well.
yeah, well, I'm not so much concerned about, you know, the water on my property, it's gonna retain its sponge effect, because I'm not gonna do any kind of development on that. It's just that what you're proposing there, Mr. Canal, is to, put asphalt, put shingles, put everything, nothing that's gonna absorb water. And that is a natural sponge, that's 7 or 8 acres down there, great sponge for absorbing what we have. That water will sit there for weeks, before it actually flows out of there. So I just don't want to cause any problems downstream just because we've put in this development. I mean, it's a good place for apartments, don't get me wrong. It's a good place for apartments. It's just, what are we going to create for those neighborhoods that are north of you?
Well, and that's, like I said, you know, that's the first thing Patrick asked me about how we go about managing. So I heard, they're not our concern all the time.
We understand that, we understand there's water, and we'll pay you to move, you put down, to let you have it fun. And you know, we want to do it right.
You know, we want to get to the next step and have everybody feel a little bit fuzzy about it. You know, what we do. The reason they're always tricky, because you're technically just talking about a use without a plan yet. We're hoping that there's enough of a plan and even a commitment, if you will, you know, to where we can move to the next step.
Adam, after the meeting, I'd like to sit down and talk with you about my personal observations of water moving off my property, the volume of water, so that you can get an idea of what I've observed personally.
Yeah. Well, you know, calculation wise, I mean, you know, 74 cubic feet per second is middle season. You know, we're talking about 74 cubic feet area per 1 second, you know, so that's a significant amount of water. I mean, I don't think there's any question on that. Like I said, on the upstream side, you know, south of the state highway, we've got the benefit, we still got pretty good farm. You know, from your property across our property, we've got a good elevation change across into the state scope. When you cross to the north, you don't have quite as good as luxury, you don't have as much, you're dealing with, you're dealing with, you know, not only are you dealing with flowing water, you're dealing with backwater, with floodwater. You know, so I know even though these properties aren't even ready for floodwater, I know they experience a backwater condition, starting right there. You know, and you're limited on what you can do backwater, with backwater improvement, even adding culverts. I mean, if water's coming back, you know, if the storage.
Actually, that's man, aren't you?
But if back it up, you're not worried about moving water through the culvert. You know, but, you know, I think it's one of those things we can do what we can do. I don't think it's, I think we gotta.
Well, and that's the other concern is we don't want water backing up into the apartment property later on down the road or backing up against the highway above that head wall.
See, I mean, I feel like, you know, like I said, I've had the benefit of looking at my plan. I'm comfortable with our plan, finish floors, and, you know, our moves. So that's why my drainage report kind of turned to the downstream conditions, but that seems to be always the one that's missed. You know, at least we can be honest, that one's downstream, it's, you know, the impact it's gonna have, I mean, it's bad like now. So
I think that's why Adam talked about that in lieu of is let's fix what the issue is now and help that downstream instead of just, you know, if we did a retention, our goal would be to keep it where it is now, push it downstream.
And detention, you little technical about detention, when you design it for a specific storm. So you design it for your site, which, you know, you consider the size of your site, the 8 acres, you know, relative to the basin. So you design it for you look at a chart and find the most intense storm event, for your design storm length for that. It's a short duration, and your detention accommodates that. What detention ponds fail to do is take into account the long duration storms. They just simply don't, the structure, you can only accommodate so many types of storm, and they're made for the short duration intense storms. So in lieu of improvements where you could add a culvert downstream, combine it with city's money, add maybe 3 culverts downstream, I feel like that gives you more benefit than an on-site basin. Once again, I'd be glad to do most cities. I mean, I don't think the ordinance says either way right now, and that's what we're trying to navigate. Maybe you hadn't had to cross this in a significant way. But I think we got some flexibility because we got a developer that's willing to do whatever.
So I'm asking just a question, is this an appropriate use for planned unit development possible, given its size and all the concerns or issues?
If y'all feel comfortable with using that mechanism, I'm certainly good with it. The problem is we're not really varying. Typically, we have in the planned unit development, you would have 2 or 3 non-conforming elements, a setback, a parking count, something of that nature. The development's good in its merit, but it just, you know, for whatever reason, it doesn't fit nice in your code. So that's traditionally, that's where you use a planned development.
I'm just wondering if something like that might raise comfort levels if people knew in advance where things are going to be, how they're going to be laid out.
Well, and no say, and I think that's, you know, volunteered that last time. I'm more than happy to do it as a planned development, because you have more, the commission has more flexibility to bind certain improvements to that planned development as well, with recommendation. So, you know, it has a design plan along with it.
Certainly not my call.
We talked about that.
And it seems like,
Yeah.
maybe my observation may be incorrect,
No,
but it seems like there are reservations about this.
Right,
to me.
right. Well, and that's what, that's what I want to see if we can, we've got to move one way or another. I mean, we can't sit there and, I guess it could, but I don't think that's the best, to go for rezones to have the best highest use of the property, so we can be used in some form of fashion. And if the commission don't think apartments are it, then that's nothing we can do. But if they're concur that apartments are the best highest use, but we've got concerns about the drainage, then we would step back and say, well, let's find a mechanism which we can address that. Like I said, most towns do have stormwater detention. That's the classic way to handle it. And I've done a lot of, I would consider myself an expert on water county. I've done some, drainage counts in Northwest Arkansas and Texas, not every municipality that there is. And I've seen Cabot City is here for 10 years. I've seen how they function, I've seen how they work, and I've seen how they work better. In my experience, detention ponds work really well. We've had immediate downstream improvement. I mean, there's no way coming off our side back against the road lock or something like that. When there's adequate space, when there's a little bit of downstream distance between the development, even as little as this, sometimes the detention, you just don't see the benefit of the detention. So, in Cabot, I always recommend they in lieu of a fee where the city can go in and buy money with it, and we can make a real improvement that the downstream residents can see. They can't see or understand really a pond with a weir structure. They can understand the third culvert going. Perception's a lot, Sure, it helps a lot or helps a little. That's why my tendencies tend to go towards the fee. So, we're glad to either bind that, Patrick Chief, glad to either bind that to the rezone that's submitted to the council, subject to reviewing the plan, or come back with a plan development mechanism where you can see more of the plan.
I'm flexible, whatever the commission decides. I mean, personally, I'd like to see a little bit more. And maybe I'm being transparent, maybe I'm a tad selfish. I live in that area. I want to make sure that we don't do anything that in any way takes away from there, if that makes sense.
I certainly don't mind that. I'll say one thing. Just keep in mind, we'd like to come back with a full site grading plan.
And
You're asking for Patrick to commit to more money than even what my fees, than what this lieu fee would be. And we're glad to do it. If you're comfortable, if y'all can kind of tell me your opinion, if your comfort level is that departments are the best high shoes. But we're concerned about.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm being honest. I'm not sure.
That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm just being honest with you. Too. I mean, we certainly don't want to be out, my money and then still get turned around.
And y'all know, operate ties here. I don't push one way or the other.
Sure.
I mean,
And
what
I'd like to ask, this is a good report. It's a good foundation to build from. We're gonna have to correct the culvert size on that. I'm gonna talk to you about my personal observations on the drainage that comes off of my land and the land that flows onto my land. So we're all talking the same math here. Sure. Okay. But I'd like to be able to take this to our street department and let them have a look at it. And evaluate it from their perspective, especially when we get down to Tara and Kel there, and the issues that they have to deal with down.
And one thing that'll help too, and I know y'all are probably pressed for time, if we have these in advance, we can look over and we can do some of these conversations that we didn't have in
Yeah,
time.
I don't think we can make our recommendation to council. I don't think we can bind anything on private public commitment of funds to improve anything.
That's some council's decision.
Not that we're trying to pass it, but we don't have the authority.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, but technically you can't find improvements to rezone because there's no improvements proposed. But with that being said, I'm telling you, we got a developer who's willing to share those improvements in some fashion. So that's the conundrum. But, you'll never get to those improvements without somebody moving, without a recommendations to council, you know, for rezone with, you know, strong concerns kind of thing, you know, some form of fashion, you know, we need to get it to the next level.
We don't mind doing whatever. I don't want to throw good money on bad money and try to get it. Bad bank account.
Yeah.
Understood well enough.
Of course.
Anyone else have questions or comments? I mean, I think y'all know, I'm trying to be transparent around that. Anybody?
So our game plan from what I'm hearing, we'll give you all a chance to study the ready report. Maybe Mr. Rush to talk to the street department, maybe see what their take is, kind of confirm my numbers, you know, COVID numbers. Like I said, I'm saying I have about $3,000 to do a simple curb cut and add a 30-inch ABS. And that gives you realistic, you know, so essentially what we're proposing is improvements on a third of this, you know, we could do, and 33% more capacity to one of those streets. Whichever one.
In theory, if the numbers all add up, the city would need to do the other two, basically.
Right, if they saw the need for it, absolutely.
I think we understand where you're headed. Guys, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. Commissioners, any specific action we need to take on this matter or any others?
I've got one thing I want to bring before the commission. When you go to our city website, Plan and Zoning Commission is on the webpage. When you link on it, it gives all of the commissioners, their addresses, their email addresses, their phone numbers, which is all public knowledge. But look at the next page. When you go to the Housing Commission, it's just their email. Finally, go to the last page. When you go and you look at our council members, it just gives their email. And the reason I'm saying that is for some reason, my name is at the top of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I get a lot of phone calls, people asking for building permits and questions about street cuts and questions about this and that. I don't mind that. I can usually answer the question and deflect them in the right direction. But that got me thinking, why do we have to put all of our information on there when even the council members only put their email address? So at this time, I'm going to move that we request that the city council remove all of our pertinent information except the email address from the Plan and Zoning webpage.
And I'll second that because I get calls.
Proper motion in many seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Anything else?
I know that we adjourn the meeting.
Proper motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.